Hello, kindred spirits. We're continuing our discussion here of past lives. Back when Jana was getting into all this stuff, as she called it, and experiencing her first past life healing, she was like, well, I'll try this, but if I'm anybody famous, I'll just know that this is a bunch of hooey. So she popped back into her first past life, and it turns out she was a starving streetwalker in 18th century Paris. So much for being someone famous. She was highly anonymous and very poor and struggling. So that was her first experience with going into a past life. And I've had many, many fascinating experiences being a Sunan story healer and taking clients into past lives. Probably my most memorable past life was the client, and when we popped into the past life, we were in one of those litters, that were common in the ancient world, where slaves would have a structure based on wooden poles, and the slaves would hold up the poles, and the highborn or the powerful or the rich would sit in enclosed boxes on top of that. Anyway, we were sitting in one of those, traveling along, and it turns out my client was Brutus. Yes, he of the infamous betrayer of Caesar. But of course, all of history is written by the victors. So of course, Caesar would portray Brutus as the betrayer. And the interesting thing is that when we went into this past life, from the perspective of Brutus, Caesar was the betrayer, because Caesar had mouthed a whole bunch of ideals that Brutus subscribed to. But it turns out that Caesar was just interested in power and was quite willing to use followers like Brutus to get what he wanted and throw them a few bones, in words so much to that effect. So this client, as Brutus, had to examine his expectations and what he thought Caesar meant and what Caesar actually meant. And it was a very educational past life, not just for the client, but for me. And in fact, as I look upon the past few years of politics in this lifetime right now, I realize that that past life really helped educate me and hone what I call my bullshit meter. Because politicians can mouth words, but that's not what you should pay attention to. Use your intuition, use your soul senses, go behind the words, feel into them, see into them, know into them, understand into them. What is this politician really meaning? Is it just lip service? Or does the politician actually believe in what he or she is saying? So that was a highly educational, really interesting past life. And that is one of the points of what I'm trying to say. Whether you're in a past life as a client needing some healing, or you are a past life person helping the client through the past life, a Sunan story healer or some other approach, it doesn't really matter. It works both ways. Not only can the client get a healing, but the healer can get a healing or a lesson or an insight too. And that's the marvelous thing about healing at the emotional and spiritual level. Because at that level, it's very obvious we are all connected. We are vibrating energy fields in a sea, an ocean, a multiverse of energy information. And of course, that energy is also matter and also unconditional love and also consciousness. All right. Remember my afterlife equation there? Go back and review it if you've forgotten about it. But the point is, everybody benefits when you heal yourself, whether you do it for this life or a past life. You are contributing to the healing of the multiverse. So when people say, oh, it's self-absorbed, you shouldn't do that, go out and save the whales or do something like that. I'm saying, when you go within and heal, you are doing something to, quote unquote, save the planet. Because if you want to raise the consciousness of the planet and of the mass of people, first, raise your own consciousness. And do you know what raising consciousness means? It means simply removing self-judgment or vows, automatically freeing your consciousness energy field to vibrate at a higher, more healed frequency. That is exactly what consciousness raising is. All right, it's not a mental exercise, it's an emotional and spiritual experience. So whether you start in a past life or you go in this life or wherever you are, when you free yourself from self-judgment and or vows, you automatically raise your consciousness to a higher, freer, more authentic vibrational rate for you. And so you are contributing to healing. But it's done in a unique way that does not trample on anyone else's free will. Until next time, vaya con Dios.